We also, thank you, Sherry. We also were sort of waiting to see how many people were here before we decided to do introductions or not. So I think we have a lot of people here who probably mostly know each other at this point. So if you could just add your name and affiliation into the chat as just a reminder, and if anybody wants to kind of see who's who on the call, then we will have a record of that for everyone. So we are going to jump right into things today. See if I can figure out how to move things around on my screen with all the Zoom boxes. So we're going to start with an implementation update that I'm going to run through. And so I think at this point, some of you may know the projects that happened in 2023 with our first year of funding, but we're just going to do a quick overview of those. And then we're also going to review kind of how the application process went for this year and the projects that we'll implement in 2024. So I'm going to share. So I want to mention, I always like to mention at the beginning of these, whenever we're talking about project implementation, how important it is, all the different partnerships that we have. At FUDR, we do have some long-standing partnerships with TU, and you can see Ryan here. You'll see him in a couple of pictures. But you know, this is us. This is not one of the projects that was funded, but a project that was completed late in the summer. And we took both, we met up with Ryan from the DEC one day, and we met up with some of our funders from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service another day. And, you know, these are all just incredibly important as we go about implementing these projects, that we have funders from state and federal that are actively engaged. We have great partners at Trout Unlimited who we could not do this work without. And so just always like to mention that. So in these projects, we have funding that is from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, obviously the line item in the New York State budget, which is why we all meet here, and some funding for some of our projects from the Water Quality Improvement Program. And so just a little update that the federal funding for this year, so far, it looks like we're looking at 11.5 in the Senate, appropriations bill, 15.5 in the House, and I'm not sure actually if they've come to some resolution, but there's an additional 5 million from the infrastructure law. That's 5 million for 5 years, and this will be the second year of that, I believe. So you know, a lot of money from the federal government, and so that this state money is super important because that federal money requires a 1-to-1 match. So just as a, is someone trying to talk? Because I can't see. So if someone's trying to break in, you just be bold if you have something to say. So just as a quick reminder, for this year, for this funding, our task was to form a steering and advisory committee, develop an action agenda with DEC and the steering and advisory committee, begin to develop a re-grant program, implementation of 3 projects, which are here, and I'm going to run through those. I know Heather is on, so Heather, if you want to say anything about this, please feel free, but I will say that $100,000 is going to the Highland Access, which is this beautiful boat launch that you can see on the right-hand side. There's also some pervious pavement in the parking lot, signage, bike racks, and Heather is the real expert on this project because it is an over $1 million project. So, you know, we are contributing a pretty substantial amount, but also, you know, percentage-wise, you know, probably less than 10% of the total project cost. Do you want to say anything, Heather?
Other than thanks. Thank you so much.
Oh, of course. Well, thank you. We love working with you. And, you know, this is obviously a really fantastic project. The picture on the right, just so you know, is from a Day on the Delaware event that we actually hosted there. You know, it's just a really lovely site, and it was a great way to bring our funders together on that site and kind of really showcase this really cool partnership. So many partners on this project, and it really is, you know, spectacular. The next one is Mongop Restoration. So a lot of these pictures, the scale of things really gets lost, but Hopefully you can see that there's just a massive failing bank. So we have a lot of erosion, sediment moving here. And this is a very typical type of treatment that we do, where you end up with the root wads, which stabilize the bank. We do some short-term planting here to get grass stabilized for kind of some immediate stabilization. And then you can see that there are some little native trees and shrubs that have been planted in here. So this will be, a really long-term. You have, you're starting with your root wads, you're growing native plants and shrubs in there that will really contribute to the long-term stability in this area. And you can see the funding, contractor, and partners for this. So the next one is the little, and the last one actually, is the Little Beaver Kill Waterline Restoration Project. And this is in, or just outside of the hamlet of Livingston Manor. And there was a water line that was actually exposed. You can see part of it right here that the contractor is standing on. There's also just erosion, knotweed, just kind of a mess where you have, a fallow farm field that the property owner is now mowing. And so the river keeps moving, it keeps eroding, just all of that very exposed topsoil, which you really can't see here because it's all covered with knotweed. So here are a few more pictures of that. This is where the stream bank originally was, and actually was shifted over a bit because it's eroded so far in that direction. So this is a quick diagram of what that tow wood structure looks like underground. So the logs actually crisscross, which give it quite a lot of stability. This is just for scale. I mean, those are 20 plus feet long logs, and you just see the end of it sticking out into the stream. So again, very stable. There's before and during and almost after. And you can see this is the only bit of that root wad that you see in the project. This is a detail of the grade control structure that was put in there. So essentially what happened is this grade control structure was installed, and then we did not backfill over that exposed water line. The river filled itself in. So it filled itself in up to, the elevation was set by this point. So now the water line is buried safely underground again, and the river did most of that work on its own. Obviously this is a massive project to put in the grade control structure, but the filling, we did not put fill in the stream. So you can see some finished pictures of that. And here's our contractor who saved some of the native trees and shrubs that were on the banks there. Oh, this is a miscellaneous slide that should not be in here. I'm sure you all care about Cooks Brook, but it's not part of this funding. And then in 2024, you probably remember a few months ago, we asked everyone if anybody was aware of projects that could be constructed in 2024 using the same funding. And we got a reasonable list from many of the likely suspects had projects in mind. And so we essentially vetted those with Trout Unlimited to try to sort out, because there's a very hard rule with this funding that it must be spent in 2024. So every year we have only the 1 year to spend our money. And if not, we are not even sure what would happen. So it's a big unknown if it would go back and not be able to be spent, or what would happen with that. But essentially, these are the projects that we know for sure that all the matches in place and they could be constructed with no issues in 2024. And then we also got some other projects that we are going to, if we haven't already, do some outreach and figure out, what needs to be done so that when we promise this money, we know, with a very high level of certainty that that project will be constructed in that year. So we're looking at some of these other projects for 2025 funding. So that first round of outreach that we did, is essentially helping us not only figure out what can be funded in 2024, but it really also helps us figure out what are people's priorities, what is our pipeline, going into 2025 and even possibly beyond. So just a kind of glimpse at that piece of things. Why it won't let me go to the next slide. So for the projects that were selected for this year, we have 3 culverts, one in the town of Deposit, one in Colchester, and one in Hancock. And so we'll be replacing, you can see a lot of these are very old, damaged fish passage issues. You know, you get kind of the whole stew of issues that will be solved by putting in a correctly sized natural bottom culvert. So you'll have, you know, protection on the road from flooding, which means less work for the town for infrastructure maintenance. You'll have really great aquatic passage. You know, in the case of some of these squashed ones, I mean, this is just actually can become a safety issue depending on exactly how bad they are. And I'm not sure in this case how, you know, how close we are to an actual failing culvert, but that does happen from time to time. So I don't know why I can't flip through these slides. So I'm gonna have to just go back and forth. So this next one. So this is the Willowee-Mock Habitat Improvement Project. So we have a very similar situation where you can probably see this exposed water line. So we'll be putting in a grade control structure here as well. And that will provide more habitat. You can see it's like a very consistent stream bottom here, which generally means not great habitat. But it will also, the stream will cover itself to protect this, you know, really important piece of infrastructure here.
I have a question on this one.
Sure.
Do you do an assessment of the condition of the water line itself before burying it again?
You know, I could find out the answer to that question, but I do not know it off the top of my head. So this would be a town of Rockland. I would reach out to them to find out if they had done anything like that. I can't even get out. Oh, there we go. This is not. Did I skip one? Oh, I skipped this one. Okay, so here's Oquaga Creek, which is the last one. So at Oquaga Creek in the village of Deposit, they have wastewater, community wastewater infrastructure at the top of this bank. And you can probably see pretty clearly that this rock that was put in here is just really degrading and undermining. And they're concerned, you know, if this bank keeps eroding, it could eventually impact the wastewater treatment plant. So this project will stabilize this bank and, you know, provide some amount of protection for their wastewater treatment plant. It will not stop that from flooding, but because it did flood fairly recently, it's been separately flood proofed. But you know, this bank is also important just so that the platform that wastewater treatment plant sits on is not impacted by the stream itself. So those are the projects that
Molly, was that last flooded in 2006?
I believe so. Yep. Does anyone have any questions or comments about any of that? We had sent out an email with that project list, so hopefully it's not entirely new to you at this point, but you know, always feel free to reach out through email as well if any questions come up. So next up, we are going to have Jillian just give a quick update on the Never Sink Watershed Management Plan. One part of this work is that as watershed management plans happen in the watershed, you know, we're going to keep an eye on them. You know, in this case, FUDR is partnering with Sullivan County, who is the primary grantee, and Trout Unlimited on this project. So we are obviously very much entrenched in the, you know, the day-to-day of what's going on with this one. But, you know, you'll see in the next part of this conversation as well that, you know, we're very interested in knowing what plans are out there, what's going on with those, because, you know, a big part of what we want to do here is we want to, you know, sort of amplify the goals and priorities that are coming out of these other plans through the action agenda. So I'm going to hand it over to Jillian.
Hi, everybody. Jillian Pagnotti here. Yeah, so I predominantly work on the Never Sink Watershed Management Plan. So I'm going to give you a little update. Currently, we're actually in the drafting of the plan. we'll back up a little bit. We have completed 7 public outreach meetings. The first 3 were in the beginning of the year. The wintertime, they were all virtual and they were very just educational. The next 3 that we had were in person and very interactive. So it's where we got a lot of feedback about, problem areas or areas that the public wished to see conserved. And then our last public meeting was just the beginning of this month, and that focused on the plan's goals, strategies, their actions. So from there, and if you want to check out any of these presentations, they're all on our website. I'll drop a link to that in a few minutes. But yeah, our last one was to review the draft of the goals and what comes along with the goals. So we sent that out to the public. The public had about a week to respond to us just before the holiday. So we got some good feedback. From there, we're going to put that information into the draft and share that again to make sure, we're on par with what everybody's thinking, the public. And currently we have the plan writers writing certain chapters that have been assigned to them. And from there, we'll reach out to our steering committee members to kind of hone in and edit and make sure we have everything going correctly. So our next public meeting will most likely be at the beginning of the new year. And that will be actually going over the draft of the NeverSink. Our plan is to have a draft completed by the beginning of the year and then kind of out to distribute to get feedback on that. With that, we have also met with all 12 of the municipalities that are within the NeverSink watershed area. They start up in Ulster County, move through Sullivan, and end in Orange County. So we got a ton of feedback from them on projects, culverts, things of that nature that need to be either repaired or assessed, as well as, maybe some hiking trails they'd like to see or access is put in. So we've covered quite a bit of ground in a year. So that's kind of where we're at.
Thank you, Jillian. So I think Sherry is going to take over now. Like I just mentioned, one of the things that we are tracking and that we want to highlight in the action agenda is all of the other plans that exist in the watershed. And so, one piece of this is that we are trying to make sure that we have a complete list. So Sherry's going to run through that with us. Sherry, you're muted.
Thank you, Molly. Yeah, so we have created a list of existing plans that we came up with this list of existing plans, and there may be some missing. So we were hoping that we could share this list. I did have Heather look at it, and Larry Underwood looked at it for me. We don't want to miss anything. So you don't have to look at this right now, but I'm going to put a link. I mean, we could, or I could put a link in the chat and then you could go through it. And if you notice anything that is not on here, that is named incorrectly, if you have a link to the existing plan, I only got partway through the list. It would be appreciated. Your help would be appreciated. And again, it would be, that's the way to make this list the best possible list that we can have. So do you guys want to look at this now? Do you want me to put a link in the chat? Do you want me to email it out with this recording? What's the easiest way? I think I'm going to do this right now.
Sherry, I would say email it, because as soon as this meeting is over, we'll lose access to the chat, so we won't be able to get back into it after the fact. So email might be the easiest.
It's a good point, Jen. I'm going to put it in the chat and then I'm also going to email it. Okay, does anybody want me to scroll down or do you want to look at
Sherry,
it?
on for Ryan, if you're still with us on line 7, I think it is. No, line 10, sorry. That should actually read Tailwater's Joint Fisheries Investigation Plan. Ryan, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with that.
Yep,
It
I'm not
was-
as familiar with it as Chris Van Maren would be, but yeah, that sounds right, Jeff.
And I
It'd be the
think-
fisheries management plan, investigation plan. Yep.
Right, and that's actually is going to set the stage for a first ever Upper Delaware River Tailwater Fisheries Management Plan. That's going to come out of that. And I think, most of that's going to be Chris in Region 4, Ryan, but I think
Yep.
It might extend to Callicoon, just so you know. I don't, we're not quite sure, but that might draw you into the conversation a little more, maybe.
Yep.
That's a little bit in our future, but I just want to let you know that.
Thanks, John and Ryan. So I think the thing to do is I will put it in the chat. If anyone has anything that they can add to this document, that would be very helpful. Or you could email me, or you could just change it right in this Google Doc. I'm going to put it in the chat. I'm also going to email it. So,
All right, thanks, Sherry. One comment did come in through the chat. I don't know if you could see it when you were sharing your screen, but. So we have a couple of housekeeping items. The next meeting is supposed to be December 26th, which I'm imagining that we will all be not working that day. Maybe some of you will, but for the most part, a lot of us will not be. So we were thinking to reschedule that to December 20th at 1 p.m. So that will be coming out as a calendar invite. But if anybody wants to flag any major thing that many of us would be going to that might be an impediment to picking that date, feel free to do that. But that seemed pretty open on our calendars. So we're hoping to get a reasonable turnout on that day. And at that meeting, our goal is to have a draft of the re-grant program guidelines and the timeline for how people can apply for that re-grant funding. And then we also will review the goals and objectives from the action agenda, and we will have draft recommendations to go through during that. So we're hoping that there's a lot of interaction during that meeting. And I think that is all that we have for today. So I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments or anything else on this, but if not.
Tom, did you get your question answered in the chat box there?
About the Mongop project?
Yeah. Was that answered? I can't remember.
No, I don't think so. Molly, I was just wondering, the project you shared information about on the Mongop,
Yep.
where exactly in the watershed was that?
I can pull up that map again. I'm not super familiar with the Mongop watershed.
It must be above the reservoirs, I'm assuming.
Oh, no, it's not. It is, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about a 2024 project, but you're talking about one that was already constructed. And Jeff, didn't we just have this conversation? And it always gets confused. Where is that Mongop project? We actually have all been there, and I'm terrible at how to describe where that
Yeah.
is.
Molly, this is Ryan.
Where it meets the Willowweemoc, right?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Molly, it's a tributary to the Willowweemoc Creek
Right,
near like Livingston Manor area.
right. It's
The
maybe,
DeBruce camp, the DEC DeBruce camp.
yeah. It's maybe
there's-
what, 3/4 of a mile or a mile up the Mongop. It's on
Yep.
private property.
Okay, so there's another stream named the Mongop up there.
Yeah.
Okay. Wasn't aware of that. Also, on the joint fisheries investigation management plan that's coming out of that, is that focused on salmonids only?
Yes, Don, it is. It's the investigation was focused on the salmonids, and the management plan will also be focused on the salmonids.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, well, thank you all.
Kevin Clapp had a question asking which counties were looking for hazard mitigation plans, which counties if it's within the upper Delaware watershed. I'm reading Delaware and Sullivan have online plans. Ulster is working on updating theirs, and Orange has a sub-grant to update theirs.
I think that is probably about all of the counties. There's a tiny bit of Broome County. I think there might be a little bit of I don't know, a couple counties north of Delaware County that just barely touch the watershed. So we could look in those hazard mitigation plans if they exist, to figure out if there are any projects that are in the Delaware specifically. But thank you for that.
Yeah, does anybody just looking down the list, or is there anything glaring we're missing that anybody's aware of? A plan that might be out there that didn't make our list? Remember, the goal here is not to replicate or reinvent, it's to add value. So, you know, we're gonna be looking at all these plans and figuring out how our overlay on them is going to improve coordination on watershed management. And a lot of that will be reflected in projects that we choose. But we just want to make sure we have an understanding of everything that's out there.
Maybe Brent, we could lean on you a little bit because there is, for me, a little bit of confusion because there are several different types and territories in the NYC, or sorry, yes, the DEP's plans. There are just so many different ones, and I want to make sure that we have everything that we need and the most recent versions of everything that we have in there. So.
Yeah, sorry. Oh, there's video. Yeah, I mean, we can look and see. If you're gonna send a link out to this, I tried clicking the link in the chat and it told me that I didn't have access, so maybe the link in the email will be better. But when I get a look at the whole thing, I can consult with Jen and see what plans are missing, if anything.
Sounds good. Christina put one in the chat. Sherry.
Okay.
I realize that the PDE one is usually pretty estuary based, but I know they've tried in the they've tried to reach up into the basin and think about the upper watershed a bit. I'm not sure how useful it is for this particular exercise, but I will say there are a lot of really great historic data sets within that TREB report.
Thanks, Christina. I just put another link in there that everybody should be able to click on. I will also email it, but in case you want to go there now, Brent.
Yep, I got it now. Thank you.
Okay, good. Jeff, sorry, were you?
I was gonna say, ask Lori maybe, and Lindsay if she's still with us, and Don, if we cover everything within the national park and the Park Service and the Upper Delaware Council purview.
I think so, and we'll take a closer look at it. Something that's coming to mind for us that we have, that the Park Service put a lot of effort into about 8 years ago, our foundation document, and that lays out some goals and things for each national park unit, and we have one of them. So I'm wondering if that might be something we could add to the list in addition to what you guys have here. So but yeah, I'll connect with Don and Andy on that too. And just in case everyone doesn't know, this is Don Hamilton's last meeting with this group. He is retiring and he will be enjoying retirement by the time we get to that December 20th meeting. So I just want to give Don kudos to this whole group too. And we will make sure we mine his, information. Yeah, big claps for Don.
Yeah, congrats, Don.
Yeah, congratulations, Don.
Thanks, Lindsay. It's been great working with all of you, and I'll miss that, but looking forward to having more time to do more fun things. Hopefully a little more
Are you
fishing.
saying that we're not fun, Don?
I heard that too.
No, I didn't mean that.
I was hoping you were gonna be a top FUDR volunteer by, say, January, Don, but
Well, I'm open to doing volunteer work for conservation organizations. So
Oh, good.
yeah, we can discuss that.
very good. Well, congratulations, Don.
Thanks.
A stellar career.
And a couple more links are coming in through the chat, Sherry. I just want to make sure you see those.
Yeah, I'm seeing them, I'm clicking on them, and they also will come over in the notes, so I'll add them in. Thank you.
Yep. And feel free, like Sherry said, add right into that document, or feel free to send us an email. And just to plant one more seed, which is one of those things that I realize that I say all the time, but you know, especially for people who are trying to get grants, you know, think about the documents that you're referencing, you know, because it's basically just going to put an exclamation point on that when you're trying to apply for funding, you know, that this document can support another recommendation in another document. So just let us know. And that, you know, there's no real hard end date to when that needs to come in, but you know, we'd like to wrap this up for the most part in the next couple weeks. So all right, well, thank you all so much. And if I don't see you, have a happy holiday. And I hope I do see most of you though on, what did we say, December 20th.
Yeah, and we will be sending out a calendar invite for that.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye all.
Yep, see you guys.